All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for those of you that are joining us on Facebook and YouTube this evening. We are thrilled to be hosting Thomas Perry, whose new book, Hero, was published on January 16th. Our signed copies just arrived at the Mysterious Bookshop today. So if you pre-ordered it, it is on its way to you. And if you are still looking for a signed copy, make sure you order from the Mysterious Bookshop. In conversation tonight with Thomas Perry is Joe Ide, another favorite around here at the Mysterious Bookshop. His most recent IQ novel, Fix It. We have signed copies here at the Mysterious Bookshop as well. So please feel free to order those. Thank you to all of those of you who are joining us at home or at work, maybe staying late. Thomas Perry, we're so thrilled to have you. Joe Ide, we're so thrilled to have you. I will hand it over to you, gentlemen, talking about Hero. Enjoy, everyone, and I'll see you in about 45 minutes. Enjoy.
Thomas Perry, I've been reading you since the 80s. I think we were both 9 years old at the time, but I've been reading you since the 80s. And I was saying before we came on that I have learned much from you about many aspects of writing. So before we begin, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
In your new book, Hero, private security agent Justine Poole saves a wealthy couple from being terrorized by 5 armed robbers. And Justine is very skilled, very astute, and she subdues all 5. Their boss is so angry, he hires a hitman, Leo. And so there's this duel of wits between Leo and Justine, and it's made more intense because both characters share the same qualities. They're really smart, really clever, relentless, able to anticipate. So it's a chess game, but it's a chess game between masters.
Well, I'm glad you saw it that way. It was one of those fun books to write. There are some that they never seem to come together, and it's like you're building the Frankenstein monster and you get it to the correct number of pages and stuff, and you realize that no matter how many times you sort of give it that jolt of electricity, it just never gets up off the table. It's dead. But in this particular case, it was a character that I got interested in, and it was kind of fun to write. Really, almost any bit of it. It was kind of pleasure to me, and it was I hope that carried out or sort of got to some of the readers. It's just Justine is somebody that I sort of instantly liked and decided to have some fun with. But I also like villains.
Please. Go ahead,
I just said that I like the villains in this book. As they occurred to me, I kind of laughed. But
Anyway. One of the things you do, one of many things you do to create more tension, is to up the stakes. Initially, the media sees Justine as a hero, but as the duel with Leo is unseen, the media has no story, and so they turn on her. Exactly what the media would do, that feed of clay thing, and it widens the scope of the story. It grounds it in reality, and like I said, it was one of the many things I've learned from you.
Well, I'm glad you did. It was, that was part of the fun, and it's one of the things actually that you do terrifically well is to show the effects of fame and media attention and so on a person's psyche and their ego and stuff. In IQ, the what you're really watching is sort of or let's say part of what you're watching is a kind of self-destruction of the major celebrity that makes everything else work, the rainmaker, and and it's really it's interesting to kind of contemplate that stuff because we're all so
It is.
exposed to it all the time, and it's
It is.
you know
I think one of the ways you define character is by behavior, what they do and how. But I think if you have a character, say, that pushes somebody off a rooftop, what's interesting to me is what that character is feeling before, during, and after they push somebody off a rooftop.
So,
That's what's fun for me, that part.
yeah, well, I mean that is what we're writing about all the time. I mean, we're writing about people. I mean, the circumstances sort of come out of those characters, and we're just kind of exploring who who that person is, what everything looks like to them, how they react to, I don't know, danger or possibility or all kinds of other things that come our way as we go through life. And I think we both just love that. That's the part that it kind of makes you want to get up in the morning and,
It is.
as soon as your coffee is going through the machine, you're ready to sit down and go to work, which is.
Isn't that amazing? Like every
It is.
morning, you don't even assume, you don't think about what you're going to do. You just assume it.
Yeah,
It's a great part of the job.
it is. It's wonderful. I just, it's one of those things. I've always thought that, people who complain about how hard it is to be a writer and what terrible suffering they go through and all that, is that what they're trying to do is just make sure that everybody isn't doing it. So we have too much competition. Right?
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, but it's wonderful.
Your characters are defined by big behaviors, what they do when they're in danger, say, but also small ones, details. In Sleeping Dogs, one of the Butcher Boy series, there's an analyst from the Justice Department, Ide Waring. This is one of my favorite things. Waring is driving on a completely isolated road. No one around. She's not being chased or watched, and there is absolutely no reason for her to switch on her turn signal. But she does anyway because, quote, it made more sense to use up 1/10,000th of the life of a 40-cent bulb than to surprise a pedestrian she hadn't seen. The engraving should have said, Ide Waring, no fool. And that's about as defining as anything else.
Well, that series has been one of the sort of long-lasting pleasures of my life because there are four books. The first one written in 1980 and 81 mostly, published in 82. But the second one was 10 years later because I got curious about, what the main character, the butcher's boy, would be doing at 10 years later. Because, I knew that I probably wouldn't be as eager to do things like crawl from one balcony to another on the 10th floor of a hotel, something like that. But I was a lot better liar than I had been 10 years earlier. And so I wondered what he would know and what he would be good at by then. And, Elizabeth is, I don't know, sort of, I guess you would say the necessary partner to the butcher's boy, because she always, being in law enforcement, is always going to a place that he just left and there's somebody dead. In other words, she's always trying to catch up with him. There's a time issue always. And as this goes on, she always figures out something pretty close to what's actually happening, while all of her colleagues essentially, sort of fit everything that happened into a fabricated view of what happens in these situations. This always happens in this situation, and she doesn't buy that. She reacts to what she actually sees, which
she's like many of your protagonists, just in constant conflict. with the situation, and also with Michael Schaefer. He, she's trying to catch him, but she needs him at the same time. Now,
Yeah.
it's a heck of a dilemma. It really is.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of fun out of it, and it's, I mean, in writing it is really what I'm talking about. Not reading it, but writing it was fun. And the third one actually was 20 years after the second one. I wrote it 20 years later, and the one after that was, almost another 10 years. So it's like a 40-year series with only 4 books, which, it's just because I get curious about these characters, after a certain number of years. So
I planned IQ as a series because I wanted to see the characters confront new problems like everybody else. Like Dodson the hustler, he's just a hustler, but then he has a baby. And he has to react to that. So those are the things I look forward to.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't know what the answer is when I start. I don't know exactly what they're going to do.
No, absolutely, I don't. I mean, that's one of the things I marvel at with certain people who, are perfectly good writers. I don't want to slander them, but the whole, outlining thing has just never appealed to me at all. I mean, what it seemed to me was if I started with an outline, it was like the outline consisted of the best idea I had that day. If you don't outline, it's going to be the best ideas that you've had over a period of, 9 months to a year, which is, at least for me, gives me enough time to learn something in between and to think about the characters. You put yourself into their heads and sort of present yourself with their dilemmas. I mean, and also, when you talk about like Dodson, your character, I don't want to confuse people. Now we're talking about the IQ series. Dodson is really a dishonest guy, and Isaiah knows all of that. He knows what his limitations are, and over time he comes to know what his uses are. Like, and also you can't. I don't know. One of the things about that whole universe is you can't actually trust anybody completely. Once his brother is dead, it's let's say everybody has his limitations, and part of the skill that IQ has is figuring out, how far can I go and in what situation. I mean, he's never going to be a thing where he can, put Dodson in a room with his his credit cards and bank account and a phone. You can't ever quite go that far. It's just
you make that up as you go along.
Yeah,
you need the momentum. You need the momentum to get there, and that's usually some of the best stuff that you hadn't thought about before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question that when you do this stuff, part of the big attraction, the thing that's luring you to do it every day is the stuff you're going to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read Grace Paley, but she was one of the great short story writers of the last century, and she wrote a number of books that were really, or books of short stories that were really good. But near the end of her life, she wrote this book which was a biography, an autobiography called Just As I Thought. And one of the things that she says in it is that if you begin to write about a character and you think the reason to write about him is that know him so well, know him perfectly, then don't do it. Because what you should be doing is go and look at that character whom you want to go up to him and shake him and say, why do
Yes.
you do that? Why do you act like that? What's the, and as you're writing and you begin to figure out why he does that and what he's doing,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
the other options are and all that stuff, you learn things.
It's sort of like life, we're going along and we kind of make it up as it happens in front of us.
Right, and the reader gets to share in that while you're figuring it out. They're sharing, the excitement of your brain trying to work through it. It's great. It's a great experience.
It is. As many of your writers have pointed out that your writing is very direct, very lean. You could almost say unadorned, but it's done with such precision. I mean, you can generate suspense, terror, physical attraction, whatever the scene requires, and you carefully track the behavior itself. This is a passage from Hero that I literally chose from random.
Yeah.
He started to move, taking small, slow steps toward the space where he thought the bed would be. He stopped, his left knee touching the mattress, so he could feel any movement. And listen, nothing happened. He moved along the mattress, clutching the knife. And, there's not a lot of heart pounding or sweating or hot adjectives like there would be if I wrote it. But sentence by little sentence, you really build the suspense, and it's remarkable.
Oh, thank you. It's one of those things that it's you've done this, you know this, but it's not everybody probably does that can hear it. That what you're doing is turning a real experience, real feeling from your life, a normal life,
yes.
And turning it into a weapon, essentially. I mean, walking in how one walks, in the dark, in perfect darkness, and sort of figures out ways to keep from crashing into something. Is that's part of the craft of a killer, but it's also how you get to bed at night if you stayed up too late watching a movie and your wife already fell asleep. It's
exactly.
Yeah, we all feel it.
Starts with a real feeling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it starts with a real feeling.
Yeah, but I ask you a question. Do you like dogs? You have such scary dogs in IQ, but the way you were writing about them was, people who know dogs know that you know dogs. Do you, because you figured them out. You have them kind of a good sense of what they're thinking and how they're going to behave or how they should behave, and why you would be concerned if the big one that comes, doesn't behave that way. You got a problem. And it's interesting.
A lot of what you write really reflects your own feeling, but you craft that so that it's an integral part of the story. And if it isn't, then you're just showing off.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's
I want to talk to you about dialogue, because yours is really terrific. Elmore Leonard said, "Everybody talks," meaning the characters are articulate. Like, no matter who they are, they say exactly what they want to say in their own vernacular. So it's not a generic cop; it's a particular cop, and it's something you do to great effect.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a great admirer of Elmore Leonard. I think he's terrific.
Yes.
I actually, in fact, he was the reason why I went to the Tucson Festival of Books the first time. When they were going to have they were going to start a Tucson Festival of Books. All these public-spirited people who wanted to raise money for literacy and stuff decided they were going to have a festival of books. And one of the things that they said sort of casually as they were going was that, Elmore Leonard would be there, And so I said, well, yeah, I think I'll be there too. I'll be happy to go and find it. It's one of the, you can use this as a commercial for it. Is that I really love the Tucson Festival. If it's worth.
That's a good reason to go.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was, but it turned out that he had a son who owned a restaurant there, who was a chef, and he would go and visit him occasionally and so on. And he was, but he was a supporter of the festival from the beginning to his death, actually. So.
This is kind of a long question.
Okay.
Longer than the others, but I do have a point. You said, if any writer is going to be remembered after he's gone, it will be for the parts of his work that are absolutely original and would never have existed if he hadn't written them. Metzger's Dog was the first of your books that I read. I was hooked on the first 5 pages. The character, who for no apparent reason is named Chinese Gordon, and he has this cat that's inexplicably named Dr. Henry Metzger. So Chinese Gordon and the cat are up in this loft, and there's a burglar creeping around below. And Chinese Gordon doesn't want to put himself at risk, so he picks up the cat and drops it on the guy's head. And the guy is bleeding, he runs away screaming, but the cat is so upset about being used that way that it defecates on Chinese Gordon's coveralls. And there's more. Later, Chinese Gordon is compelled to bring home a giant, uncontrollable Rottweiler. And the only one who can control the dog is Dr. Henry Metzger, the cat. Completely original. But my actual point is, that's not the way normal people think, Tom. I mean, in this instance, you went outside the box. There was no box. It's a great run through the book.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's that was I have a kind of affection for the Metzger's Dog anyway, but it's I actually got a letter after that book came out, and it was from Dr. Henry Metzger, who was a doctor at the CDC in Atlanta. And he said, "Do I know you?" My name's this cat, But it just seemed to me to be the way cats think about themselves, sort of. They're this sort of expanded dignity and kind of they appear to not care about what we think of them or something. But if you were on a platform, if you had built a platform in your workshop to be your living space, and you had a cat, the cat would definitely do what Dr. Henry Metzger does, which is to kind of go creep up right to the edge and look down.
Exactly.
And of course that's your opportunity to scoop them up and toss them on this guy. But anyway, yeah, that was part of the fun. And Chinese Gordon is a kind of one of the things that I had fun with in that book is making up everybody's name. Chinese Gordon was it was the sort of celebrity name of a British general who was known as the hero of Omdurman. It was one of those colonial battles in, I guess it was the Sudan. That was where it was, but he was given that name because he had also had some exploits in China, and they referred to him as that in Britain. And I thought, God, what a ridiculous name! I have to use that, and I did. But there are other people. There's two of his friends are named Immelmann, after the German flying ace of World War I. And Kepler is the scientist. It's just right. It was kind of fun to do to make up those names.
It's funny that your use of names is part of the character. I mean, Chinese Gordon, you from the name you immediately know the guy's quirky or odd or not quite straight ahead.
Right.
And Elizabeth Waring is a working woman's name. And your name, like in Hero, Justine Poole is a working woman's name, and the bad guy's name is Mr. Conger. And you know, it's another way to build character. Those little things, and they sort of add up.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of get a sort of free charge of reality if you pick a name that fits, but also it's easier for you to write about them. I mean, that's another bit of information that you have in your head as you're writing, you know, that you think of them as, you know, whatever their name is. And, you know, in the case of Justine Poole, I don't know, this is probably a spoiler, but it's made up. I mean, it's a nom de guerre. She realizes that it's a great name for a person who does what she does, which is to protect celebrities, and, you know, as this sort of expert in but anyway, it's one of those things that is part of the fun, and I do like to play with identity, and you know, I think that's really one of the reasons why, you know, we're here. I mean, that's why what you do, that's what I do. It's, you know, who is this person? And also those moments, those weird moments that you end up sometimes saying, you know, who am I going to be? I mean, in a way, that's what IQ does. You know, that's what Isaiah does. You know, I mean, he has discussions with his brother and stuff, but I mean, at a lot of different turns, he's got a choice. You know, and he's got to essentially say, you know, remind himself kind of who he wants to be, rather than who fate is pushing him to be and stuff. And it's, you know, that's that stuff is gold. That's what, you know, because you're not only informing yourself, you know, but you're informing your audience about, you know, what you should be thinking about.
I was talking about your writing, and I talk a lot to aspiring writers, and I think the primary thing standing between an aspiring novelist and being published is the writing itself, separate and apart from content. And this may sound harsh, but if the writing isn't there, basically you're done. You know, nothing else will save you. I mean, not character, story, possible franchise, none of it. The writing absolutely has to be there, and you know, why not? It's like, you know, going to NASA and saying, well, I skipped the whole aeronautics thing. You know, it took too much time. You know, it's all this math. You know, but I meet a lot of aspiring writers with like great ideas and great energy, but the writing just isn't there.
Right. Yeah, and you know, it's very true, and you know where it comes from. That is, the way to learn to write is to read. You know,
Exactly. Yes.
You know, it's one of those things that I think there's an awful lot in our you know, current situation that at least lures young people away from reading, but also lures young people away from reading the best stuff. You know, it's just
that is completely true.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you sit a 16-year-old kid down with I don't know, a volume of Dickens. It's almost as though they're reading the foreign language. I mean, it's just, you know, they have no pleasure out of it at all. It's a process of deciphering, and you know, it really you know, I hate to be like the old guy saying, you know, those young people, you know, but you know, I mean, I think they're being deprived of a lot of great opportunities. You know, the world is just filled with books. You know, it's just, and good books, and good new books, and good books that are about I don't know, the world that they live in, and they, you know, and I don't know, among the few things that we know for sure is that it's kind of odd, but you know, reading anything makes you smarter. And watching
It's
things
true.
on a screen has a way of making you meaner and dumber, which is it's
You know,
not.
it's interesting that young people are always looking for stimulation. They
Yeah,
want to be provoked. They want something happening. And so when they have peace or time to read, they think it's
yeah.
boring. You know, um,
Well, it's,
it's
you
a
know,
it's
it's
a it's a dilemma.
you know, when you're I don't know, 16 or 18, um, compared to the girl who sits 2 rows away from you in algebra, is probably a hell of a lot more interesting than anything you can read. But you're not,
Yes.
maybe
Mhm.
they can both do with the pleasure of reading a book, and it's you know um,
There are. It doesn't help that there are these gurus who say 12 steps to writing a successful novel.
uh,
But writing is a profession. It's not like a do-it-yourself project. I
yeah,
mean, how many steps are there to become a successful teacher? Well,
right,
there aren't any. There aren't any
right,
steps.
yeah, that's
No,
right.
it's a lot of long experience and hard work.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is one of those things that I guess you've stumbled over another of my pet peeves. Whenever anybody tells you, that something or other, let's say a novel has to be written according to the steps of a plot, and you know, there are rules to doing this and rules to doing that. I just feel despair, and sadness because,
Yes,
there are no rules. The reason it's pleasurable and interesting is that the rules are imaginary. There's no such thing. There isn't
no such
any
thing.
no such thing as a rule. It's just the rule is right so that people can understand what you're saying, you know,
Yes,
and what helps is grammar and and an
yes.
attempt to be clear. Um, but beyond that, I don't really think there are any rules. We're not
It,
writing sonnets here.
it, it was one of the things that I really struggled with was learning to write a long form narrative while I'm writing a long form narrative.
Yeah,
And it took me a year to learn to write clear, decent prose. Literally a year. I spent the first year of writing IQ learning how to write basic, you know, basic stuff. I'm reading elements of style and on writing
mhm,
well. It was humbling,
mhm.
but it just had to be done. Just had to be done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've read those things too, but I'll tell you, I prefer um, to on writing well. I prefer Stephen King's On Writing. In other words, it's sort of one step more concise in a sense, and it
Yes,
and it really does. This is a guy talking to us not only from the trenches, but he's like the Congressional Medal of Honor winner. You know what I mean? He's
it's true.
uh,
It's true.
if we're soldiers, he's the hero. I mean, this is. I also have to congratulate you that you got to write so well after that 1 year of going from screenwriter to novelist. I mean, it's remarkable, and you're being appreciated more and more as we speak. But it's great. I mean, it's terrific, and also, I mean, you're writing about um, people who don't necessarily speak standard English that the
Yeah,
English teachers of 8th grade would make us follow, and you're writing things that are hip and new and often I don't know, what shall we say,
profane.
it's there's swearing and stuff, and it's
Yes,
essentially several sort of sub-dialects, of things
Yes.
that people are doing, and that's miraculous, really. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that in your books that I wouldn't be confident in being able to do, if I were trying to do it. I haven't heard that, you know what I mean? We learn to write dialogue by listening to people talk.
Yes,
And,
yes.
I mean, that's, you've got the trick. I mean, you've got a great ear for the way people actually speak, and it's great. That's
You've said, and I'm paraphrasing, that when you're writing, you're conscious of the reader's expectation, but what's most important is your enjoyment of the story. If you're bored, they're bored.
yeah,
And my take on that is I write what I want to write, and my responsibility to the reader is to deliver.
yeah,
To write my story in the clearest, most entertaining way I can. And
yeah,
I think we agree on that.
yeah, completely. I mean, it's if you are not having a good time writing a scene, you've lost your reader about a page ago. It's because the reader's going to give up before you are, and I find myself doing an awful lot of well, let's say looking and pressing the delete button, because
Right.
things can often be said more clearly and concisely than necessarily comes out of my head the first time I think of it. That is, you're writing along and you're trying to get to the point that you want to, and if it doesn't work, one of the great gifts is sensing that. If you can fix it before your first reader reads it, then you're ahead of the game, because they're going to find it.
I recently wrote a book, and I struggled with it, and I really struggled with it, and everybody hated it.
Mhm.
My agent, my editor, they despised the book. I had to throw it out. I threw out a whole book.
Yeah.
And it was, as you say, it was really reflective of how I was feeling about the book itself.
Mhm.
And it really showed.
I think we've all, let's say if you're an honest writer, you have what I would call a group, not just one, but a group of projects that crashed and burned, and that you didn't see a way to fix it. Really, I mean, after thinking about it and so on. And I've always referred to those as our priceless family treasures, because they're never going to be seen outside the closet where they're stored. It's
you said about writer's block. I get asked about this a lot. You said, I don't have dry seasons because I don't allow them, and which is also my view. All writer's block means to me is that you got out of your chair. And I think a lot of aspiring writers, they don't know what the next beat is, or they don't know who the character is, and they stop. They get out of the chair. But as you well know, creativity takes practice. You've got to knock your head against something time and time again before you break through. Is being a writer is a lot about just persistence.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's refusing to be defeated by, your own, I don't know, fatigue or I don't know. I guess I've kept it away by holding it in contempt. I mean, saying I don't believe in allowing writer's block. I mean, I don't, we all feel at some point, that we're tired. But there's always a way through. And if there's not a way through, there's something different is going to happen. I mean, you're going to move to
Yeah.
another aspect of what you're talking about. What you're writing about at that moment. If the scene doesn't work, take it a different way, whatever, but don't give up. Giving up is a problem. I have, as I said, I probably have 3 or 4 full novels that I've got in the priceless family treasure trove, but and I've set aside at times, thinking that the answer would come to me. The answer is going to come to me, but then I don't go back to it. I essentially leave it because it's so much better and more attractive to me to go on to something new always. Essentially just erase that project and go on.
We've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's one other question I wanted to ask you. I knew how others define the term voice, but I didn't have my own definition. And it didn't occur to me until I was rewriting something for the 10th time. And, you're going line by line and word by word. And by the end of the book, you've made thousands of choices.
Yeah.
And I think those choices cumulatively are your voice, because no one else would make the same choices. It's like you have 1 million words and you can only use 10,000.
Yeah. Well, it's also, while you're writing, there are many voices, and all of these characters have apartments in your brain while you're writing. They're there, and in a sense, all of those voices they're sort of like a chorus. In other words, these are the voices of that story, and so in a sense, I like to think that it isn't. I don't really have an identifiable voice, but that's probably untrue. Of course.
It isn't true. If you read a Tom Perry novel, Tom Perry wrote it.
No,
it's totally clear.
Well, thank you. I guess it's one of those things that in a way we tell ourselves things that will make us more able to do our work, is what I'm getting at, probably. We create a truth.
I think the key part of that voice thing, you're like your own writer's voice, is in rewriting something 10 times. You can't make a good choice until you rewrite the thing 10 times, and you're making better and better choices. But somebody said to me, no rigor, no voice. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know. It probably is true. I just, we do these things, and as I say, we make up something afterwards to explain what we've done to ourselves. I mean, we don't, while we're doing it, our mind is somewhere past that page. It's, it's deeper. You're looking into an alternative reality almost, and when you finish the book, you just kind of come back to normal.
In some ways, it's a process job. You have to love the act of writing, because when I'm done with a book, I'm like, what's next?
Exactly.
What's next?
Yeah. I mean, I read somewhere that Virginia Woolf would fall into these terrible depressions whenever she would finish a book. So at that point, I don't know when that was, maybe 20 years ago or so, I read that, and since then I've always started a book on the day that I sent out the last one. I would start writing, just so that the monster doesn't get me, during the moment when I'm idle.
It's completely true. We're alike in so many ways, Tom.
Yeah, I think we are. It's true.
It's remarkable.
All right. Well, thank you to Thomas Perry, and thank you so much to Joe Ide. We were thrilled to host both of you, incredible writers. And as mentioned earlier, Hero is available. Signed copies are available at the Mysterious Bookshop right now, as are signed copies of Fix It, 2 books that I absolutely loved, and I know many people have already and are bound to as well. So thank you both so much for that incredible conversation. Thank you, Thomas, for signing copies of the book for us. Thank you, Joe, for signing copies of your book and for agreeing to be part of this conversation. We appreciate it very much. And thank you to all of you who tuned in and commented. We really appreciate the engagement. So thank you all so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. That's great.
All right. Take good care, everybody. And we will be back here at a virtual event tomorrow evening, same places, same time, with Otho Eskin and Amy Peace talking about Otho's new book, Fire Trap. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. And Joe, thank you for just a wonderful conversation. I just enjoyed that a lot. I really did.
Well, I'm glad. You know, it helps being really curious, because I was really curious about it, you know. And I wanted to ask you writers' questions. You know, something that
That's great.
we both have experience.
Yeah.
The question I hate most is, what's your book about?
Yeah. Well, the answer is, about 327 pages.
No, I rarely get the chance to talk to other writers, and I enjoy this too.
Yeah, it was fun.
Could have
It really
been in the
was.
living room. Yeah.
It was great to listen to. It was a great conversation. So thank you both again so much. I hope everyone has good evenings, and hopefully we'll be doing this again very soon. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks.